The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
Hey everybody, sorry about that. Talking and no sound, so I think she have sound now. Sorry about the weird timing. It is an hour later than I expected, completely unexpectedly. I couldn't make it at 2. Well, I mean, I should have expected it, I guess. One of the things that I hate most, and about Puerto Rico, and mostly I love Puerto Rico, but one of the things I hate most about Puerto Rico is the fact that when you go to the doctor's office, you land up sitting and waiting for hours to see the doctor. I mean, I know even in California, it can be slow. I don't know, you sit 45 minutes, maybe an hour, wait for the doctor. I was there for 5 hours. 5 hours. Waiting until I saw him and got out. So it took over 5 hours. I got home, 15 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago? Yeah, 5 hours, 6 hours, 5 hours. That's insane. It's just insane. It drove me crazy. So I spent my time trying to prep for the show on the phone, but you know, it's never the same. And on the phone, you can't really create documents and everything. But literally, I got home 15 minutes ago. So anyway, shorter show, only 2 hours, and we'll see what we cover. A lot of it will depend on your questions. So make this a big question show, because I probably have less material than usual for a 2-hour show, although I'm sure I can come up with stuff. But yes, keep the questions coming. Let me just open up this one file I forgot to open so that I'm super ready. And let's see, where is it? All right, I don't have access to it. All right, that's fine. We'll manage. I will manage. All right, so let's start, as we have, in pretty much every show lately, with an update from the situation in Israel, Biden, Gaza stuff. I mean, wow. So Biden did an interview the other night, and in the interview, he was the most explicit he's been. If Israel, he will not provide weaponry to Israel if it's going to use it in Rafah. Rafah is a red line. I mean, we know American presidents are very, very good at abiding by red lines. Maybe they're better at abiding by red lines when allies are involved than they are when foes are involved. But Rafah is a red line. If Israel goes into Rafah, they're not going to get these weapons. That is a public statement. It was forceful. And what does this do? Well, what this does, of course, is Hamas is listening to it and say, wow, cool. We just need to hang in there, right? I mean, Israel can't go into Rafah, so kind of we win. Why would we negotiate? Why not? Let's wait a little bit. Let the Israelis sweat. We're not going to release hostages. You know, Biden's doing the work for us. Biden is defeating Israel. We don't need to defeat Israel. Now, you know, I hope, and we can hope, that Israel ignores Biden and goes in anyway. It doesn't really need these particular bombs in order to attack Biden. In order to attack Rafah, it needs the bombs more for taking care of Iran if that becomes an issue, because these are pretty big bombs. But Iran is listening to it and saying, Israel might run out of bombs. Okay, cool. Maybe we can get Hezbollah involved. Maybe we can get our other proxies involved. Maybe we should attack Israel again. Maybe this time America won't shoot down some of the missiles and help them out. But what the hell? I mean, talk about, siding with the enemy and giving the enemy all the wrong signals and working to defeat your so-called ally that you supposedly committed to helping defeat Hamas and prevent them from ever coming back to the Gaza Strip. So, Biden is basically, betraying Israel, stabbing them in the back. Now, I know he's not doing this because he really believes this. He's doing this for political reasons. He's doing this to try to win Michigan. And maybe that's true. But really, does anybody think, does Biden think, does anybody in the Biden campaign think that doing this is going to change the mind of people yelling, genocide, Genocide Joe or whatever, right? Does anybody think that that's going to sway them? Now, it could, at the margin, get more Arabs in Michigan to vote for him. But God, is he desperate? And he is desperate because in spite of the stories that Stormy Daniels is telling about her sexual encounter with Donald Trump and being paid off and all of that, Trump is doing well in the polls again. That is, Biden had a slight bump, but it really does not look good for Biden. It's really hard to believe in many respects, primarily because I think so many people dislike Trump, but because even in the Republican primary, even though Nikki Haley's not running, she's still getting a significant percentage of the vote. But it does look like Trump is the front runner and that Biden is running desperate and people do not want to vote for him. So it really does appear that this is an act of desperation on Biden's behalf. By the way, an act of desperation, I think, is going to come back to bite him. In this sense, I saw a number of posts online from people from wealthy people who lean Republican, but not lean Republican. Have always mostly been Republican, but lean kind of free market Republican, who hate Trump, despise Trump. Right? Really, really hate Trump. But who said, there was a good one from Cliff Asness. I know Cliff pretty well. And Cliff despises Trump and has been actively engaged in anti-Trump stuff since 2016. And I think gave a lot of money from what he wrote, gave a lot of money to Nikki Haley. And Trump yesterday was, Cliff was saying yesterday, God, if this is what Biden's going to be like, if this is Biden's behavior, then he said, I'm considering the unthinkable. And unthinkable is voting for Trump. And I think there's a lot of Jews, a lot of wealthy Jews, Ackerman, maybe even the guy who forced the president of Harvard to resign. A lot of very wealthy Jews who are sitting there and saying, we would probably vote for Biden, not because we're leftists, but because we despise Trump. And although some of them are lifelong Democrats, but we won't because of what he's doing right now, and we won't give him money. So it would be really interesting, and of course, he might be losing money from the far left. So he's kind of stuck, and he's clearly taken the stand that he can afford to lose the pro-Israel vote. He can't afford to lose the anti-Israel vote. So he's going to go anti-Israel and try to attract the anti-Israel vote. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. Of course, this morning, other voices within the administration, now formally, were saying, look, we're really going to provide Israel with everything it needs. We're not going to abandon them. We support its mission. We support what it wants to do. These are probably not bombs they need for Rafah, so no big deal. As long as they don't use these bombs for Rafah, we're okay. We'll provide it elsewhere. And on and on and on and on. So, they're trying to speak out of both sides of their mouth. They're trying to cover their bases. They're trying to appease everybody. This is American politics. It's disgusting. It's offensive. It's the kind of playing to your voters that both parties do, that Trump is a master of, and Biden is just not very good at it. It just increases the odds that Biden's going to lose this. So it does look increasingly like Biden loses. But of course, a lot can happen. We're talking about Donald Trump. So a lot can happen between now and then. Maybe people will tune in to Stormy Daniels. It is pretty amazing that the alternative to this geriatric, never particularly intelligent, completely pragmatic Democrat who nobody wants to vote for, the alternative to that is a guy who's being accused of paying hush money to a porn star. It is a sad, depressing, pathetic state of American politics that this is what we've come to. These two are the best people America could put up for president, that these two political parties could nominate for president of the United States. I mean, pretty pathetic. Pretty pathetic. So here we are. Anyway, in terms of actual stuff in Gaza, Israel does seem to be building up the forces in the east of Rafah to maybe engage more thoroughly with Rafah itself and enter into the rest of Gaza and finish off this mission, this war that was started October 7th. It's hard to tell if that's actually what's going to happen. I think we'd have some pre-warning, because my expectation is that Israel would put down leaflets to tell civilians to evacuate, and they haven't done yet. They only did it with a small region in eastern Rafah where fighting is ongoing. It's also true that Israel had to enter for a third time into an area in Gaza City that they claim to have cleared twice before, and there was intense fighting in this area in Gaza City. This is in the center north of Gaza, an area which Israel had claimed more than once that they had under their control, and yet a significant presence of Hamas in this area. Israel had to go back in. And maybe this is a tactic Israel uses. It withdraws, lets them come out of their holes in the ground, kills them, withdraws, like new ones, comes out of their holes in the ground, kills them. Maybe it's the tactic. I'm not sure how many years this would have to go on for in order to get rid of them in the end. But given the tunnel network, maybe it's just impossible. Maybe it's impossible to do it. They're discovering, of course, in Rafah, close to the Egyptian border, many tunnels. We'll see how many tunnels they ultimately discover in Rafah leading into Egypt. And how many of these tunnels are known to the Egyptians, and how many of these tunnels have facilitated smuggling out, who knows, maybe even hostages, and smuggling in, of course, weapon systems and everything else. So this should have been the first step in the war, taking over the south, basically destroying the tunnel system into Egypt. isolating Hamas and isolating the Palestinians in Gaza completely from the rest of the world by isolating them from the Egyptians. But it was not the first thing that was done in the war. And as a consequence, we still hope it will be done at some point. But that's where Israel has positioned its forces to do. Whether they actually go through with it or not, still to be determined. Everything they ultimately do everything, it looks like. It just takes them much, much longer than it should, and that that it should and that it was expected. I think they've done more than I expected, slower than I expected. That is based on my assessment early on. All right, let's see. So that is the news, and of course, offensive operations, defensive operations continues in the north of Israel vis-a-vis the Hezbollah. That is still a stalemate. That's as I did expect. At some point, Israel's going to have to go into Lebanon and rid itself of this threat to its northern border. I wonder if Biden will allow them to use the bombs then. I don't know. I wonder if the Biden administration will support Israel's attempt to go into Lebanon and to clear southern Lebanon of Hezbollah. In any case, it's something they're going to have to do at some point. But there's still no indications that at some point is any time in the immediate future. All right, this one's kind of I don't know, funny, insulting, ridiculous, pathetic. So I don't know if you saw this video. Vivek, Scott's nominee for vice president, Vivek invited Ayn Coulter onto his show, and I guess he's got a podcast, YouTube channel, show. I'm sure he has a lot more followers than I do, and he invites people and interviews them like everybody else, and he invited Ayn Coulter, and he gave this nice introduction, and then the camera shifts to Ayn. I guess the camera doesn't shift; they're both on the screen all the time. Anyway, he talks, he introduces the show, introduces her. Then she comes on screen and says, "Thank you, that was a great introduction. I really liked what you said." And then she says this. She says this, right? Quote, "I agree with many, many things you said." And she says some stuff about I'll disagree right now with some of the stuff in order to make this interesting. But I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian. And Vivek is sitting there, kind of stone-faced, kind of thinking, what the hell? Why did she say that? What is going on here? I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian. He's got dark skin. He's from Indian descent. He was born in America, otherwise he couldn't run for president. But his parents are Indian. And Coulter would not vote for him because his parents, not him, his parents are from India. Something is sick on the American right. This is Ayn Coulter, not some crazy new right fringe character. Although I've always thought she's fringe, but she's pretty mainstream these days. Certainly post Trump era, she is super mainstream. So yeah. This is the modern Republican Party. This is the post-Trump political party, and it is quite something. Quite something. Let me see. I was just looking for this. Yeah. All right, so I'm trying to look for the actual statement. Yeah. So yesterday, there was an announcement made by FreedomWorks. FreedomWorks. Do you guys know? I don't know if you guys are familiar with FreedomWorks. Those of you who've been around for a while know FreedomWorks. This is a conservative group that is originally, I think, funded by the Kochs. It really was the organizing factor and the energy behind the Tea Party. They were founded about 40 years ago, but really became a big force behind the Tea Party. Matt Kibbe, in those days, was the CEO. They organized that massive Tea Party rally in 2009 in Washington, D.C., where I spoke for 2 minutes, and there were a lot of people there. I got to know a lot of the people in FreedomWorks at the time and was very friendly with them, and they were friendly with me. Matt Kibbe, again, is more libertarian, smaller libertarian than he is a conservative or right wing. Anyway, FreedomWorks then split, but really what happened once the Tea Party faded, it was FreedomWorks struggled, I think, to sustain its side, but it was still active, it was still engaged, it was still there. Anyway, yesterday they announced that they are closing FreedomWorks. They are closing FreedomWorks. And the reason they gave is fascinating. The reason is that, that in the post or in the midst of the Trump era, right, a huge gap basically opened up between the free market principles of FreedomWorks and its leadership and the MAGA populism of its members. FreedomWorks still believes in free trade, small government, robust merit-based immigration system, and of course, the fact is that their audience no longer believes that. That is, when they were, when they were trying to recruit new people to come in, their older members were dying off, and they were trying to recruit new people. They found that there was no interest in these ideas among young Republicans because they were enamored, they were thrilled, they were focused completely on Trump-like populism. And this is what I told you 9 years ago would happen. And this is exactly what happened. It's exactly what happened in Brazil with Bolsonaro. It's exactly what happened. It's what happened here. That Trump's populism has basically killed the better elements within the Republican Party. Trump populism has basically, captured young people who would have become more free market, more libertarian-minded, more small government, constitutional founding father types. And what Trump has done is he has sucked all the energy out of that and focused all the energy and showed that to win in the Republican Party, to be successful within the Republican Party, you must be a big government, anti-trade, anti-immigration, anti-free market populist. You must be a new type of nationalist. This is what Trump has done. This is what I told you Trump would do. This is what he actively pursued. He's cleansed the Republican Party of anybody who is different. This is what drove people like Cliff Asness out of the Republican Party, as I mentioned earlier. But this is what has led now to the shutting down and the disappearance of a well-established, large, and for a while, very popular activist group. It wasn't a think tank, it was more an activist group like FreedomWorks. But what is really scary is not FreedomWorks. What is really scary is what it did to Turning Point, what it did to people like Charlie Kirk, who went from being an Ayn Rand loving, relative free market, limited government, founding fathers, constitution, to a Bible thumping, MAGA, brainless, anti all the things he believed in the past. And that is what happened to Turning Point. Turning Point is a organization of young people, and this is what has happened to young people. And in that sense, Trump has managed to, in my view, destroy the better elements within the Republican Party, and he has turned it into a horrible party, a statist party that competes with the left on the type of statism, but is basically just as committed to to statism as the left has always been, right? Trump's populism is what has incentivized, energized, and facilitated this dramatic shift in Republican politics, and it's a shift I don't think Republicans will recover from. This is why I've argued really do need a third party, and I'm not sure it's a shift the country will recover from, particularly given that it looks like Trump will win again, or even if he does lose, he'll lose by a very small margin, thus continuing to give credibility to something that should have zero credibility. I understand not voting for Biden, but enthusiastically, supportively voting for Trump is unfortunately a vote against America. Again, I said enthusiastically, supportively, right? Because I know that'll be clucked out, and it'll just say, you're un-American if you voted for Trump, which is not what I said. All right. Thank you, Wes. Wes just did $50. Really appreciate that. I think John started us off earlier with like $20. So, yeah, thank you, John. These are stickers. Jonathan Honing came in with a sticker. And Mary Aline came in with a sticker. So thank you, guys. Really, really appreciate the support. And yes, I reduced the goal for today slightly because it's only going to be a 2-hour show versus a 3-hour show. All right. So we gone from the Tea Party that was that basically wanted to overturn the Bush-style complete compromising and selling out, perspective on of the Republican Party. With free market types that would stand by the Constitution, stand by the Declaration, and stand by for freedom and liberty. The Tea Party types. 2, rejection of the free market types in favor of, and complete capitulation to, greater statism in the name of God and country. That's where we landed up, right? So we went from, pathetic presidents like Bush to, Tea Party candidates who used to believe in free markets and used to believe in America and used to believe in the founders, like Ted Cruz for a while and even Mike Lee, to those people and the rest of the Republican Party, completely betraying those principles, completely subverting everything they believed in the past, and becoming wholeheartedly Trump supporters, populist statists, basically statists for a statist government from the right. It's a true sad state of events to see this, and to see people supporting it who you think, based on what they claim their credentials are, should know better. All right, this is a funny one. Earlier, I think it was again yesterday, maybe the day before yesterday, sometime this week, Apple came out with a new ad for the iPad. I don't know if you guys saw this. it's basically an ad. It basically has this pile of musical equipment, of sculptures, of drawing, a guitar, a trumpet, just a bunch of a gramophone, records, all this other stuff, right? And they're all piled up, and then this thing comes down and crushes them all, just eviscerates all. You see them all being disintegrated and crushing. And when it rises up, what remains there, right? What remains there is the new iPad Pro. An idea, of course, is that that the iPad replaces your musical instruments, it replaces your gramophone, it replaces sculpture. You can do all that art and music and everything else you can actually do on an iPad. So there's an aspect of it that's kind of clever. But there's also, and particularly artists, there's a real cringe element to this. And that is, having to watch the destruction of all these beautiful things. That is, it's not an issue. It's not an issue of just, of replacing, right? The fact is that you cannot replace sculpture and painting with an iPad. You cannot replace a trumpet with an iPad. A trumpet allows you to do stuff with a trumpet that is interesting and fascinating. Right? But you cannot replace it. And kind of the relishing the destruction of all this stuff, there's something wrong. It doesn't strike me as the kind of advertising that Steve Jobs would have approved. It's dramatic. It's got that Apple flair for the drama, but it's just way too nihilistic. And not only is it's nihilistic, and it's just not right, not appropriate, not right, and kind of sad. Kind of sad that Apple would stoop to something like that. It's you can. I think Apple in the past would have said, "Yeah, look what we're taking the trumpet sound. Look what you can do with it with the iPad, and look at all the music you can listen to." But this isn't about destroying. I mean, there is an aspect here of what's it called, creative destruction. Schumpeter's term for capitalism as creative destruction, as the process of progress where new technology replaces the old, and there's an aspect of that to it. But in this case, because the technology that's old is aesthetic and still has immense value in and of itself and cannot really be replaced, it's not like the automobile replacing the buggy. I think it was in bad taste and should have never been done. You'll see a lot of people complaining about it. At the end of the day, they might not all have the right motives. I don't necessarily agree with their right motives, but I think they're right to complain. Right now, I think as we speak, really, or in the next few days, the Eurovision Festival is happening in Europe. This is a singing competition that is once a year. Every nation sends a representative to the Eurovision to present that country, and they sing. And then there are judges, and I think now they have audience voting to determine the winner, and it's hugely hyped in Europe. It's a big deal, and Israel, which obviously is not in Europe, was allowed to join the Eurovision a long time ago, and has actually won the Eurovision a few times, because the Asians won't let it join. It has no other geographic affinity where they will let them. So the Europeans kind of said, okay, you can join us, you can be part of Europe. So Europe has sent singers there, and I think at least once, maybe twice, has won the competition. My first memory of the Eurovision is also my first memory of the pop group ABBA. If you remember ABBA, many of you I'm sure do. ABBA has had a little bit of a comeback, so people know who ABBA is. But ABBA is, of course, the rock band or the pop band of the 1970s. And the first time I heard ABBA was watching the Eurovision in the early 1970s. I can't remember what year it was, where they sang Waterloo. And I'm not going to sing it to you, Waterloo, Waterloo, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Anyway, Waterloo, and won. They won with Waterloo, and that really elevated, I think, ABBA to the stratosphere, and made them into an international group. And after that, they became really, really huge. So I remember that. I was watching that Eurovision when they actually won that. Anyway, Israel's competing this year. The Eurovision this year is in Malmo. Malmo is a city in Sweden, not far from Copenhagen, so across the bridge that connects Denmark and Sweden. And Malmo is in that part, so I guess it's southwest Sweden. Malmo has a large population of Muslims, so a lot of the Muslims who emigrated to Sweden landed up settling in the outskirts of Malmo, so they are there. Anyway, there's been quite a bit of an uproar about Israel having a singer at Eurovision during while the war is going on. This is supposed to be really horrific, and it's it really is a what do you call it? So there are a lot of protests, right? The pro-Hamas organizations are rounding up, and they're going to protest this, and they're going to make a big scene over there. Already in dress rehearsals, the Israeli singer has been booed. I guess the Israeli singer made it to the semifinals, and in the dress rehearsal for the semifinals, she was really, really booed. So I guess they're now on, right now, they're on. So it'll be interesting to see if she makes it into the finals. But yes, there is a lot of security, huge amount of security around the event because of the threat of terrorism. And of course, there is the booing from the audience, which will be distracting for her. But, good for the organizers for continuing to run this, even if this is likely to be disrupted and likely to be a controversial event. Now, today, to be an Israeli is very controversial. There was a skit on Israeli television about a couple who were going to Europe on vacation, and the wife says to the husband, we have to pretend not to be Israelis. And she takes away everything he has that might identify him as Israeli. She even teaches him how to stand in line, because Israelis never stand in line. They always go at the front and elbow everybody out of the way. So she teaches him how to stand in line so that he doesn't give away the fact that they are Israeli, because it's dangerous, unpleasant to be in Europe right now, recognized as an Israeli. Me, on the other hand, my goal is to go to Europe and give a bunch of talks about Israel and to stick it in their eye as deep as I can. I did that in London, and I hope to do that elsewhere in Europe. It looks like, just as an aside, I was just invited to Cambridge, Cambridge University, to participate in the Cambridge Union debate, which is, I think, the oldest debate society. It's older than Oxford. So in the Cambridge Debate Society, I've never done a Cambridge debate. I've done 2 or 3 Oxford debates. Very, very prestigious, very, very high profile. Peter Thiel was just at the Cambridge Union. He had a hard time leaving the Cambridge Union because of the anti-Israel protesters. Anyway, I'm supposedly there. I've been invited to debate the existence of the NHS at the Cambridge University Debating Society, the Cambridge University Union, Student Union. And sadly, though, and this is why I haven't completely committed to this. Sadly, though, they've scheduled it on November 28th. Do you guys know what November 28th is? Well, it's Thanksgiving. So it's either Thanksgiving or Cambridge Union debate on the NHS. In other words, I have to talk to my wife and get a thumbs up to go. So, but I expect I will go as part of a Europe trip where I do a lot of talks. I'm hoping some of those talks will be about Israel, maybe even debates. We will see, and I assure you, or I am assured that there would be security at all those events, because it is not pleasant to be associated with Israel these days, anywhere in Europe. All right, what were we going to say? Yes, so that is news from the Eurovision. It's sad that a singer needs to be scared of going and singing. All right, let's see. Yeah, this is a positive story. This is one of my favorite stories. All right, so this is a story in Bloomberg. And it really is not a story in the sense of news. It's something, it's pointing something out. It's illustrating something, it's making something real. And that is, we live in pretty amazing times in spite of all the bad news, in spite of Biden being president and, Donald Trump running for the presidency. In spite of that combination, we live in pretty amazing times. And one indication of how amazing the times are is something Bloomberg brings up, and that is we actually have a space race right now. We actually have a space race about going back to the moon and putting people on the moon. And the space race is not between the Soviet Union and the United States of America, or between the US and China, or anything like that. What is exciting and fun, and I think really motivating, is that the space race right now is between Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. Now, Jeff Bezos is far behind, I have to say, but I wouldn't rule him out, right? He could be the underdog who comes back forcefully. He's certainly got the money and the resources to come back, but it really is a race between Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. They take it, I think, quite seriously. Bezos has some significant investment in rocket technology that will take a spaceship to the moon and back, hopefully, and back. Elon Musk, of course, wants to use the moon as just one base station on the way to Mars. And, Blue Origin, is still probably years away from a functional vehicle, and still struggling with a business model that is profitable. But they haven't given up. They have not given up, which is super excited. And again, they have the financial resources to keep going and to keep trying and to keep innovating and to keep coming up with new things. I mean, what a world to live in. I don't think anybody would have thought of this 20 years ago. What a world to live in which you have now companies competing to succeed in space. It's interesting to identify some of the reasons why SpaceX has done better than Blue Origin, because they were founded at around the same time. And I think a lot of it has to do, and this is really interesting, A lot of it has to do with the fact that SpaceX has not been afraid of just blowing stuff up. I mean, I'm serious. It's not been afraid of failing. Indeed, has targeted failure as a means to learn. It has imploded rockets purposefully in order to learn from the implosion. Whereas I think Blue Origin has been focused on trying to perfect. SpaceX has been focused on experimentation, underground testing, and pushing forward. And there's a good lesson here. There's a good lesson here about it. According to this Bloomberg, article, it's still, given the mission's complexity to land people on the moon, it's still possible for Blue Origin to do it before SpaceX. That is, don't rule them out. And again, what's fun about this is all private money. I mean, there's government money involved because, Musk and Blue Origin are trying to put satellites and other things up into the sky for the government. That's how they make their money. And they have huge contracts with NASA, particularly SpaceX has massive contracts with NASA. So all of this is built in with, with NASA. Blue Origin thought they had the contract with NASA, so they're fighting over that still. See, so the government is still involved some way, but it's just exciting to see kind of the entrepreneurship that is involved here and the different business models and what succeeds and what doesn't as well and everything else. In a space race, a real space race, versus countries, bureaucrats doing this with your tax money. Right? Big difference. All right, let's see. Few other stories. Again, these are stories from the kind of we're talking about Elon Musk. Let's do this one. So we've talked about Elon Musk. We talked about Tesla. We talked about the big layoff a few weeks ago at Tesla, where they laid off a significant percentage of their global workforce. Well, it turned out that a week ago, there was a second round of layoffs. That was completely unexpected, but it looks like Elon Musk is really focused here, going in there, ripping whole departments to shreds. Some of the layoffs were in places that people did not expect. For example, the division of Tesla responsible for the electric charging stations, which is a big advantage Tesla has and has been very good at deploying these. That division, the head of the division was fired. But most of the 500 people team in that division has been fired. Nobody quite understands what that indicates in terms of charging stations as we move into the future. But that whole team was decimated. So there been on top of the 14,000 people that were fired in the April round, now there's a May round. This is probably a big turning point for Tesla. This might be the make it or break it moment. If Musk is really going all in on autonomous vehicles, which might be what he's doing, it's not clear, but it might be what he's doing in a full self-driving, taxi service. If that's what he's doing, then Tesla will succeed or fail based on that. There are conflicting reports about what's actually going on, so we will see. It might be that what he's done is cut a deal with China, because in America, I don't think he could deploy the self-driving cars. I don't think the regulators would approve it. But he might have cut a deal with China to deploy it there. And if he deploys it there first, and if it's incredibly successful there, then bring it to the United States. Elon Musk has spent a lot of time in China recently. That is a market he is losing ground in significantly, quickly. And he's trying to figure out a competitive advantage. It's going to be interesting to watch, but Tesla is going through massive changes and significant shrinkage in employees, and a potentially a major strategic shift. Major strategic shift. All right, a couple more stories. One is during COVID, one of the things that happened during COVID, which was interesting, I think I commented at the time, was that entrepreneurial endeavors, new businesses, spiked, particularly in the tech sector. Really, we got an all-time high in terms of new business creation in America. In starting in 2021 and really spiking in 2022, kind of coming out of COVID. Most of those startups, most of that energy, most of that productive activity, most of the engine of the U.S. economy, like their politics or not, really comes from Silicon Valley. So most of this was a consequence, came out of technology startups. That peaked in 2022. And it is interesting that since then, you've seen a decline. All the people staying at home, maybe PPP and stimulus money gave people an opportunity because the government was giving the money not to do anything to start businesses and take the risk because they had some savings thanks to the government. But the reality is that's coming down to earth. So business formation is still very high, still some of the highest rates we've ever had, but definitely down from those peaks. The one area that COVID seems to have done good in was small business, business formation. Lots of software publishers, lots of data processing, hosting, services like that. Some manufacturing, magnetic and optical media. I'm not sure what that even is in these days, right? And things like that. So a lot of businesses were created coming out of COVID. Maybe people sat at home and figured, really, I hate the job. I don't want to go back to that job. I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to follow my dream. I had this dream. And they went on and did it. Good for them. Good for them. So business formation is still very high in the United States. New business formation, still very high in the United States, but not as high as in the COVID years. Okay, last story. It's just an interesting story, I think. It's, these drugs that you can take now, what are they called? Ozempic and Wegovy. Ozempic and Wegovy. These are the hottest drugs in the world. They're selling like candy. These drugs have now been proven to cause people to lose weight in dramatic fashion. They do it by, as far as we understand, they do it by suppressing appetite and by changing certain things about your metabolism and certain things about your appetite, and they work. People, celebrities have endorsed them, but that's because in Hollywood people are popping these pills because you can take this and lose a lot of weight. So those of you overweight, it's almost like a miracle drug. Now, it turns out the Ozempic and Wegovy are both produced by Novo Nordisk. Novo Nordisk is a 100-year-old Danish company from Denmark, right? It is based in Denmark. And these drugs have just made this company explode. I mean, the company today, its market capitalization is bigger than the whole economy of Denmark. Now, it's part of the economy of Denmark, but these are two different measures. One's a measure of kind of, if you will, GDP. Gross domestic product is less. Danish gross domestic product is less than the market capitalization of Novo Nordisk. This company is now become massive. Now, it turns out that the company is actually, primarily a philanthropy. That is, the company is owned its profits are, for the most part, funneled into a philanthropy. That's how its governance is structured, right? And in spite of that, it still has this enormous market cap, right? It's amazing. Anyway, it has a philanthropic foundation. It turns out that now Novo Nordisk's philanthropic foundation is the world's largest. It is twice as big as the Gates Foundation. It influences educational research priorities. And now politicians have to consider what Novo Nordisk thinks. Danish pension funds now, because they own the stock, are flush because they made a huge amount of money on these shares. Everything in Denmark right now is, cheaper because mortgages are cheaper. Exports have forced the Denmark central bank to keep interest rates low. The company is now the thing. It's followed more than politicians, more than the government in Denmark is followed. And as the CEO says, he says, I'm quoting him, nobody's forecast this growth. No analyst, nobody in the company, nobody forecast a 100-year-old company would grow more than 30%, I think, in 1 year, right? Truly an amazing story. Basically, two drugs that do the same thing. The obesity phenomena in the West has basically made this company bigger than the country of Denmark. It is based in Denmark. And Denmark, the Danes are doing fantastically well because of it. Interest rates are low, mortgages are cheap, life is good in Denmark. Not because of socialism, but because a for-profit company has a market cap, i.e. its shares trade, bigger than the whole country. Pretty amazing. Supposedly the side effects of these drugs is pretty mild. And they're pretty safe. Millions of people, tens of millions of people have now taken them. And the known effects. Now, we'll see if this sustains itself because both Amgen and Eli Lilly are both developing competing drugs that are still development stages, but seem to be doing well in terms of trials. And there's a real potential that this market explodes with competition. And given the demand for these drugs and given how profitable they are, you would expect competition to rise. And even though I'm sure Novo Nordisk has some patents, but once you understand the biological principles involved, you probably can create similar drugs without violating those patents. So I thought that was an interesting story. I didn't quite realize how big Novo Nordisk was and how important it was for the Danish economy, but it is basically driving the Danish economy these days. If I go to Europe in the fall, and I happen to go to Denmark, I'll give you an update from there on what is going on with all this. All right, that is the news for this May 9th, 2024. I will turn now to the Super Chat questions. We got a lot of $2 to $10 questions. Not many in the $20 to $50 range. I did see a sticker for $50 from Wes, I think. Thank you, Wes. That is very, very generous. Really appreciate that. So that's helped a little bit. But again, as in the last 2 days, we are a little short from our targets. I'll remind everybody again that this show is supported by listeners like you. It does not exist without your support. You are basically paying for the time, research, effort, and all the production, whatever production goes into these shows and creating short videos and everything else. So thank you to all of you who do support the show. Those of you not listening live can support the show on Patreon. Patreon's a pretty easy, straightforward place to do it. And I encourage you to do so. I particularly value the people on Patreon and on PayPal, because it's a monthly it's a monthly support that is predictable and it's great. So please consider, if you're not yet a supporter of the show, please consider supporting the show. If you are a supporter of the show on a monthly basis, please consider if it makes sense for you to increase your support. As I said last time, we need to increase the support by about a third across the board, across all the stuff. If you're here live, please use the super chat or stickers. Again, we're not, target is not very high today, and we should be able to get through it with the number of people watching right now live. And finally, I'll mention that the Ayn Rand Institute is a sponsor. The Ayn Rand Institute is encouraging you to sign up for OCON, the Objectives Conference, that we have every summer. And you can get a discount by using this code, 24YBS10. And it'll be great to meet you there. It'd be great to hang out. It'd be great for you to meet a lot of the other listeners here. I should say that the more obnoxious people in the chat do not come to OCON, typically. So you're unlikely to meet them. So you'll only meet the nice people in the chat. So yeah, if you're on the chat and you're coming to OCON, I'm just curious, say so. If you're listening live right now and you're coming to OCON, go in the chat and say you're coming. All right. And finally, Alex Epstein is a sponsor, alexepstein.substack.com. Talking points, energy talking points, the best arguments in favor if, the best talking points, arguments on issues related to energy, issues related to climate change, issues related to fossil fuels you will find in the world, literally in the world. Alex is brilliant at this, and you should all sign up. You should all get a read. And of course, there's Alex AI, which provides you answers to questions. The AI is being trained on Alex's content. All right, a 10-second break, and then I'm going to go to your questions. All right, I've adjusted the air conditioning. All right, we got a few people. Chandler's going to be at OCON. All right, and Paul is going to be at OCON. That's good. Wonder Freeman says, you meet some of the nicest people at OCON events. Absolutely. Martin Anderson is coming to OCON. Excellent. No, it was not a bathroom break. Mary Eileen is going to be at OCON. And Adam is going to be at OCON. So excellent. So yeah, we'll have a nice group. This is just the people who are listening live. My guess is, I don't know, 25% of OCON is YBS listeners. All right. If you'd like to ask me a question, make a comment, get me to react or whatever, Super Chat is the way to do it. I am guaranteed to answer every question on the Super Chat. I go through all of them, even the ones for $1 or $2, even the ones that are obnoxious and not very nice. I respond to all of those. So feel free to do so. All right, John, for $50. Thank you, John. Really appreciate it. I've seen fear that AI will replace musical artists. I think AI only has the capacity of replacing soulless artists. To the extent music and movies have become formulaic is the right word, then they are at risk of being replaced. AI can't make value judgments. Absolutely, John, you're absolutely right. It cannot make value judgments. It can't create. It can mimic. It will reorganize. It can reformulate. But it can't create. And it can't have a theme. It can't have a value statement. Again, it can mimic. So there will always be a role for the brilliant artist. One of the things that there won't be, I think, I think what's happened, particularly in the last probably 30, 40 years, is what some people have called the democratization of art. But mediocrityization of art, the formulaic. Everybody can become an artist, right? We're a rich society. And in a rich society, people are willing to be paid for entertainment, and the entertainment doesn't have to be very good, and most people don't have great taste. So anybody can be an artist. And what you've gotten over the last 20 years is anybody with a computer, everybody with a synthesizer, anybody can write a little jingle, write a piece of music, and put it out there online. And you get a lot of crap, and a lot of mediocrity. The crap and the mediocrity will be replaced by AI. Commercial advertisers, jingles for advertising. I wouldn't be surprised in 10 years from now, those are all AI. That's the reality, to the extent that doesn't require super levels of creativity, super levels of, as John says, value judgment, any level of value judgment, it's going to be replaced. AI is coming for your job. It's coming for a lot of jobs. And you guys should be prepared. It's not going to go away. And if it does, that'll be bad for humanity, bad for you. But you guys should be prepared. The worst thing you can do is say, oh no, my job, never my job. I mean, really think it through and prep. And maybe it's not your job, but think it through, because you might want to be prepared. All right, Mary Aline, are there any politicians with principles? People are dying and losing their rights and freedom because a bunch of disgusting power lusters make getting elected priority over everything else. Where do we go from here? I don't know. My fear, as I've said many times, is the way we go from here is somebody with principles, with values, but the wrong principles and the wrong values. Really, really bad principles and really, really bad values. I think that's the only path we have. But are there any people today with principles, good values? No, I just don't see that politician. I mean, they're better, they're less pragmatic, they're less sellouts. I mean, I'm impressed by Nikki Haley not endorsing Donald Trump so far. Good for her. I thought I don't think she ran the right campaign. I think she should have gone after Donald Trump from the get-go, and she should have been much more brutal about it. But I give her a lot of credit for not endorsing him and setting herself up as an opposition or an alternative potentially within the Republican Party. But no, there's nobody out there. Even when you find somebody who you think is fairly good, like Justin Amash, Justin's awful on Israel and foreign policy and 9/11 and anything to do with foreign policy. He's just awful. Yeah. So anyway, I don't see where they are, left or right. I don't see where the principles are. I certainly don't think that the right principles are there. But this is the world in which we live, and nothing good can come of this world right now. Adam, from start of current Russian invasion of Ukraine, Biden prohibited Ukraine from using American weapons on Russian troops in Russia, only in Russian forces already in Ukraine. So what is new about Rafah now? It's always Biden. Well, I mean, Rafah is one piece of Gaza. He didn't object to Israel going into all the rest of Gaza. But yeah, I mean, Biden is terrible. Terrible on foreign policy, always has been. This is, Israel is a much bigger, more substantial, more significant ally of the United States. Now, you could argue Russia is a bigger enemy of the United States than is Hamas. And therefore, there should be more alignment with Ukraine. But yeah, I mean, this is Biden, and this is But it's the flip-flop. Remember the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I mean, this guy is terrible on foreign policy, really awful. The one area president actually has a lot of independence and a lot of freedom. I mean, the only problem with this election is that the other guy is also awful and terrible about foreign policy. So I don't know what you do. I don't know what you do here. But yeah, Biden has been terrible in Ukraine and has been terrible in Israel and was terrible in Iran. And it's just an unmitigated frigging disaster. Mary Eileen, couldn't Wegovy and Ozempic be used for a lesson in the benefits of capitalism? I've read that drugs also have benefits for people with heart disease and other serious conditions. Worst side effect I've heard is nausea. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Look what happens when scientists are left free to think for themselves, to think out of the box for a for-profit company, and look at what they come up with, and then look at how well it's marketed and what kind of response it generates and how many people it helps. It's still not clear if the benefits around heart disease are independent of its benefits on obesity, or that because it reduces obesity, and obesity is a real indicator of heart or real cause of heart disease, that's the path. It's not clear if it's independent on heart disease as well. But in any case, it's an amazing drug. Amazing drug. For a lot of people, it's going to be a lifesaver. And yes, absolutely, this is capitalism. The better elements within capitalism. You still had an FDA. You still had whatever regulatory agencies you had in Europe. You still had a Danish government that did who knows what. But the relative freedom that this company had was enough to get us where we're going. All right, Steven says he'll be at OCON. All right, and then Richard says, I'm coming to OCON and look forward to meeting you there. Thank you, Richard. Look forward to meeting you. Thank you for the $20. Really appreciate the support. We need another 10 of those. All right, Drewski. Birmingham, Alabama City Council unanimously voted to eliminate parking minimums. Good for them. Parking minimums, I was told, is where the regulation tells builders of apartment buildings, condominiums, that they must, for every unit they build, may have X parking that they must build in the building. It raises the cost of building. And of course, developers are incentivized to figure that out, right? If it turns out that the kind of people who are going to buy the condos in this particular building want parking, the builder better build parking. If, you know, in the world of Uber, it's a bunch of young people who are going to buy these places and they're probably not going to buy their own car and therefore don't need parking, then why build expensive parking when you're not going to need it? So it is heartening to see that some city councils are realizing this and lifting the regulation. But really, the bottom line is, let the market operate. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Regulators, city councils. It's city councils like this is what make cost of housing so expensive in the United States. Michael says, what, if anything, is the difference between ethics and morality? Somehow it seems worse to be immoral than unethical. I think they're the same thing. I don't think there's a difference. I think they're synonyms. So I don't really think there is a difference. I think Leonard Peikoff once talked about this. And there's a way in which he would use them differently. But nothing, but I can't remember right now, but nothing in principle that really differentiates them in a significant way. Michael asks, why is Netanyahu ignoring Biden's wishes not to enter Rafah? Well, because Netanyahu also has to, first of all, Israel's only entered a part of Rafah, and it's not entered all of Rafah. And secondly, Netanyahu is torn between two sets of incentives. One is what Biden wants, which is very, very important, but the other is what the Israeli public want, which will ultimately determine what happens in Netanyahu's political career. So Netanyahu is being pulled by competing political forces in terms of his position, and therefore he's treading very cautiously. He's going to Rafah, but not too aggressively, and only a little bit, and he has plausible deniability and all of that stuff. And we will see how it develops in the next few days. Lone Dissenter says that Harry Binswaif's talked about it, and ethics being the field qua science, some more of the theory, and morality being the field qua technology, more taking that science and applying it. So, okay. I mean, I think makes sense, but it doesn't seem to be a big distinction. Right? We still talk about moral principles, which is really those principles of the science. They're not just the technology. So we don't just talk about ethical principles. All right. Where are we? Michael says, dishonest nihilistic trolls should not be allowed on your platform. Ayn Rand would have blocked them immediately. Probably true. Probably true. Michael, how can evil have charisma? Because charisma is related to how you relate to other people. Other people respond to something in you that induces that response. I think, evil often is presented to us through the perspective of people's people who are good with people who are good at figuring out what people like and don't like, people want, don't want, and charisma often aligns with that. So I think there's often an alignment between evil and charisma. Often, it's often that the good is not charismatic because the good is focused on reality, not on impressing other people. And Meerkat, F Joe Biden, Gaza must be destroyed. I agree with both sentiments. Scott, you said recently it's tougher to debate mixed economy types than socialists. Does that mean it's more worthwhile to debate mixed economy types? No, I don't think so. I don't think so necessarily, because I think that the problem with debating mixed economy is you get sucked into the weeds, and it's harder to step back and talk about principles and talk about the topic of the debate in terms of principles. Whereas when you're talking to a socialist, it's easy because he, to some extent, is principled. You, to some extent, you are principled. And therefore, the debate is about principles. Whereas a mixed economist is always a pragmatist. And he's like, yeah, we want a little bit of markets. I'm not against markets. Markets are wonderful. Markets are great. And we need markets, and we should have markets. And then he goes into the minutia about some aspect that, if left alone, would be destructive, and then you have to respond to that. So you get sucked into the weeds, and you don't get to talk about any of the principles, and you don't get to talk about the fact that he actually is against markets. He doesn't believe in markets at all. So no, I think it's much more useful. I think it's more useful in that sense to debate a socialist. I make it again. F Joe Biden, Gaza must be destroyed. And Joe Biden is, basically laying his body in the way of destroying Gaza. So maybe Joe Biden needs to be destroyed as well. Right? That's what a lot of people are coming to the conclusion of, and that's why a A lot of people deciding to vote for the other guy. Paul, did you find out what happened to your feed yesterday when it was cut out? Yes. So it turns out, because I was streaming the, what was it, Tucker Carlson's show from Tucker Carlson's website, the algorithm monitoring all this live saw that as a intellectual property rights violation, infringement. So it stopped. What happened was, when I stopped, it keeps monitoring, and then when it sees you're not playing intellectual property right protected stuff, then it turned it on again, right? So I said Tucker Carlson, right? So Tucker Carlson's website, and it was the YouTube algorithm seeing, you're streaming content from out of YouTube. You're streaming content that has intellectual property. We're gonna stop you, and then it started it back up once I stopped streaming it. So there you go. I thought it was fair use, but I guess the algorithm disagrees. And you can't argue with an algorithm. But I got no demerits. I got no bad marks. I got no warnings. So it's not going to impede anything we do in the future, as far as I can tell. It wasn't like me talking about COVID, which gets me in trouble, right? With the algorithm. Daniel says, Sam Harris had another great show on Gaza with a military expert. Yeah, I mean, Sam is very, very good on this stuff. Very good on Islam, very good on Gaza, very good on the nature of Hamas, very good on what needs to be done. He's in spite of all the places where he's not a good thinker, he's a good thinker on most things. He really is. Ann Mikat says, I absolutely relish the fact that both sides are chanting F. Joe Biden, poetic justice for moral cowardice. Yeah. I definitely agree with that. He has betrayed, through his moral cowardice, he's basically betrayed everybody, so everybody's running from him. All right, we're basically almost out of questions. So if that's the case, that's fine. It'll be an hour-and-a-half show, back like the old days. But if you'd like to ask more questions, now is the time to sneak it in. If you'd like to have some some stickers to support the show, just to get us closer to that goal, that's good as well. But yeah, we've got like 4 comments, questions, and then we'll call it a day, unless I get new ones. Adam says, Adam talked about Biden and Ukraine before, so he says, of course, Trump, the friend of Putin and Kim, would have done worse. Yeah, I basically agree completely. Robert Naser, become a member of YBS YouTube channel, and you too will be able to post a free Member Milestone Chat message every month. Meanwhile, like and share. Thank you, Robert, for doing my marketing for me. Appreciate it. All right. Lone dissenter. Wait. Israel don't stand in line? Well, we'll see. They might. They haven't so far. I mean, they have. Everything's been slower. Everything's been less aggressive because of Biden. But whether they actually go into Rafah and finish the job, given Biden's threats, I just don't know. We'll see. Final question for the day. Thank you, Mary Eileen. Final question of the day. Do you have any shows or lectures on breaking down pragmatism and why it's evil? I don't remember. I don't know. I think I do, but they're probably old. Just do Yaron Brook, Pragmatism. There is an excellent lecture by Tara Smith on pragmatism. So do YouTube, Tara Smith, Pragmatism, and you will find her material on it. So there is material out there. And There's material out there on pragmatism. But, you know, somebody could sponsor a show on pragmatism. That would be great. Oh, I guess I misinterpreted Lone Dissenter's thing. She says, no, I mean, you said Israeli people don't stand in line for things, like restaurants or something. No, Israelis don't. Don't you know that? Israelis all push in to try to go first. There's never a line like at a bus stop, a train stop, a restaurant. It's all just a mad rush where elbows are used extensively to make sure that you get in front. Driving, by the way, in Israel is like that as well. There are plenty of Israelis in Austin, and when you see somebody driving particularly aggressively or somebody being aggressive in line in Austin, that's the Israeli, probably. Certainly in LA it is. You can see them all over LA because of how obnoxious they are. Let's see. Apollo Zeus snuck in a question. You take sports supplements, whey or cretins, etc. I don't know what you mean by sports supplements. I take some protein powder, not whey or creatine. I use pumpkin protein, and I use it with I take it with walnut milk. I really like walnut milk and pumpkin protein powder. It goes really well together, and I really like it. I take a lot of supplements, but I guess I don't take a lot of supplements. My main source of supplements these days is something called. Maybe they should sponsor the show. I think they should sponsor the show. Something green. What's it called? Green. I prefer walnut milk to almond milk. I think walnut milk is tastier than almond milk. God, I can't remember the name of the green stuff. Athletic greens. I, every morning, make a glass of athletic greens. And that has all the veggies you need for a day, all the vitamins, basically, you need for a day. It has a lot of the nutrients, a lot of the stuff you need. So it's kind of serves as my multivitamin plus. So that's what I take. And then I take a bunch of other stuff. I take something for my eyes. I take some, some other, anyway, you don't need to know everything I take. But I take some other supplements, all supplements. I don't take any medication. Some of the supplements are more, because I travel a lot and because I take supplements that enhance the immune system, or at least I hope they do. And I take supplements with, I think, NAD, which is one of these things that's supposed to help you live longer. But anyway, and yes, D3 plus K2, I do that with the athletic greens. They sell you a little thing where you do one drop in it and mix it up into the athletic greens. So I get the D3 K2 with my athletic greens. So, that's what I take. Flawed Nick says, Brian Johnson says AG1 isn't that good. Brian Johnson was taking some other green thing, but he stopped taking that green thing as well. I don't know. Athletic green is, I think Peter Attia takes it and is an investor. And I think, what's his name? The neuroscientist who has multiple girlfriends going at the same time, whose name escapes me right now, also takes athletic greens. So I don't know. I mean, what do I know? And, it's hard to tell who to trust and who to believe. I like Peter Attia. If I heard Peter Attia say athletic greens are no good, I would probably stop. You've got to pick somebody who you're going to follow. Anyway, I also take omega-3 supplementation. I also take omega-3 from, I don't know, Nordic something. So I take omega-3 as well. All right, let's see, what else do I have? Friend Harper says, following Robert's sentiments, become a 25-plus supporter. Once a month, you get at least 2 questions that aren't limited by character control, and you get to do them on video, face-to-face. But really what you should become is a $250 a month supporter, and then you get half an hour every 3 months with me. And if you go to 500, you get half an hour every single month to talk about whatever you want to talk about. So yeah, lots of different options to support the show. You can do both of those on Patreon or on yaronbrookshow.com/membership. Jeremy says, are you able to turn on membership gifting on YouTube? Membership gifting, yes. I'm able to gift membership on other channels and like giving dollars that way when I don't have questions. Let me just see something. That's not it. Yes, I can, and I will. I'll turn it on. I thought I already had, but it doesn't look like. Anyway, I'll have to do it offline. But yes, I do need to turn on membership gifting. YouTube has told me that I should turn on membership gifting. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you to all you guys. Really appreciate it. I will see you all, unless we have another hiccup like today. I will see you all tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Oh, Frank says, Victor Davis Hanson disagrees with you on Trump. Yes, Victor Davis Hanson disagrees with me on a lot of things more recently. We used to be more in agreement, and did an event together years and years ago. But yeah, he basically went that way on immigration, and that led him to Trump, and we very much disagree on Trump, and we very much disagree on immigration. And look, Victor Davis Hanson and I disagree on a lot of other stuff, including foreign policy stuff. So as smart as he is and as good of a military historian as he is, we still disagree. How shocking is that? Simon Grassi, hopefully you get Tick History on the show. I hope so too. But please, if you guys can help get him on the show by asking him to contact me at yaron@yaronbrookshow.com yaron@yaronbrookshow.com, that email, that'll be great. If you can encourage him to do it, that'll be fantastic. Ask him to get in touch. Or get me an email where I can get in touch with him. Jeremy, that Apple ad definitely gave me a visceral negative reaction. Apparently, a large segment of negative comments on X have been from Japanese. Interesting. That is curious that it would be Japanese. But yeah, there's something wrong with that ad. There's a certain nihilism there. I don't think intentional, but I think there's certain nihilism there in destroying the tools that have traditionally been used. It's more than, I mean, it's supposed to elicit creative destruction. But that's part of the problem. One of the things I don't like about the term creative destruction is I don't like the destruction part of it. I think it's overstated. I think you're mainly creating, and you're replacing, and you're improving. Destruction. Even the people who lose their jobs are ultimately better off. So it's the problem is the destruction, and here they made the destruction too real. Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate the support. All right, guys, appreciate it. Thank you. I will see you all tomorrow at 2 p.m. 2 p.m. if I don't have anything surprising come up. But that is the plan. Bye, everybody.